7th wedding anniversary congratulations. Female secretary. In the photo, secretary's a ear. The atmosphere seemed very ambiguous. I couldn't hold back any longer. I drove straight to his company, slammed the ring on the ground, smashed the wedding photo. Ethan, let's divorce. Ethan laughed softly. His tone was cold. That's what I want, Sophia. If you don't like me, you can find someone else. I left New York as he wished. I started a new life. The ever-confident Ethan was suddenly agitated. There was a hint of pleading in his voice. Sophia, I know what I did was wrong. Come back, Mrs. Ethan. Mrs. Ethan, a man like Ethan. How can you be the only woman in the world? Ethan smiles. His hand rests on Lily's black silk in her hip-hugging skirt. He's smiling in a meaningful way. He grabs her ankles. Lily laughs her ass off, falls straight into Ethan's arms, and I stood in the doorway as the nominal Mrs. Ethan appears extraordinarily awkward, like an outsider. It's not the first time I've seen this kind of intimate scene, but this time Ethan purposely posted that ambiguous photo together on the social media platform. I raised my eyes to look at the girl. Her face was overflowing with youthfulness. Maybe it was because she was prettier and younger, or maybe it was the teary mole at the corner of her eye. It was more similar to the little green plum Ethan left abroad. I suddenly felt particularly tired. I don't want to continue playing this meaningless game with Ethan. Just at this time, Ethan's little secretary spoke up. Ethan, we do this. Mrs. Ethan will not be happy. Ethan coldly looked at me, contemptuously laughed. He continued to caress the hand of the woman in his arms. So what? She is unresponsive in bed. How can she be as attractive as you? Ethan seemed to be intentional. He lowered his head. He kisses the corner of the woman's mouth. The woman reminded him, Ethan, there are still people around. My hand on the stairs suddenly stopped. Then I looked down and smiled bitterly. 7 years ago, Ethan and I got married because of a family marriage. His childhood friend also went abroad. Then I accidentally fell down the stairs at home, broke my arm. I was worried for a while that I wouldn't be able to fulfill my dream of becoming a doctor. But Ethan put down his job, helped me find the best doctor, accompanying me everywhere for treatment. Every time before I went into the operating room, he would gently hold my hand, comforting me, put me at ease. She often made soup for me, spoonful by spoonful, hand-feeding it to my mouth. Later, my hand recovered completely. It didn't leave any after effects. I also realized my dream as I wished, but only that heart. I left it with Ethan 7 years ago. At that time, I naively thought, as long as I worked hard enough, I would always be able to make him feel good about me. But the result was, he became more and more impatient with me. And time again, he tested the limits of my patience. Looking back, I happened to hear Ethan talking. So what, if someone wants to see it? Let her watch. As long as it's something I like, I'll take whoever I don't like. No one can force me, he said coldly. In this life, no matter how much you beg me, I won't want it. Lily smiled and leaned into Ethan's arms, gave me a slightly mocking look, asked, Ethan, do you like me? Ethan's tone is gentle, completely different from the way he treated me. He answered, of course I do. I looked at the wedding picture in Ethan's office that had been dropped on the floor, sighed, picked up the phone and called the lawyer, prepare a divorce decree for me as soon as possible. I didn't expect the next morning. Ethan brought Lily straight home. He commanded the decorator to come in, took down the photo of me with him, replaced it with a photo of Lily. The photo, hanging in the living room, was taken after I realized I liked Ethan. I offered to take it. I watched the photo fall to the floor. The glass shattered all over the place. I couldn't help but feel a pain in my heart. At that time, Ethan held Lily tighter. He looked at me with a sneer. Sophia, aren't you clamoring for a divorce? Then you can go from now on. Lily is the mistress of this house. Lily smiles shyly. She jumped into Ethan's arms. Ethan, you are so good to me. Mrs. Ethan, if I were you, I would apologize to Ethan right now. Lily smells of perfume. She patted me on the shoulder with a pretense of kindness, giving me advice, but when she gets close to me, the corners of her mouth lifted. A smile full of contempt and sarcasm. Sophia, 7 years. Ethan hasn't even looked you in the eye. People like you are destined to follow others. Actually, Ethan was in that position. He could see Lily's expression clearly, and her voice wasn't too loud, but he still sat on the couch and let Lily talk down to me. Yeah, in those 7 years, he's never said a fair word for me. I lifted my head, closed my eyes, a bitter smile on my face. My voice is a little hoarse. Turning my head to Ethan, said, in that case, then I'll leave it to you guys. Said I went back inside, packed up all the things, then turn around and leave. Ethan squinted his eyes, cigarette in hand, seemingly careless, but his eyes follow me unconsciously. I haven't messed with him much over the years, but every time I've come back dusty. Ethan thought this time must be the same, but somehow, he suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. He didn't even notice when the cigarette burned his hand. I received a message from my teacher when I was checking in at the hotel. Originally, I planned to go abroad for further study after the union, but Ethan said a dreamy word. Wants me to stay with him, and so it was. I stayed with him for 7 years. I gave my youth, but gained nothing. Fortunately, a teacher stepped in to help. I was able to get a new chance for me. However, I met Ethan and Lily at the hospital. Lily smiled and approached me. I noticed Ethan holding a pregnancy test in his hand. She covered her mouth and smiled. What a coincidence. Should I call you Sister Sophia or Mrs. Ethan now? Ethan gave me a look. Mrs. Ethan, Mrs. Ethan. She is also worthy. Wasn't someone clamoring to leave earlier? Why are you following me now? I'm happy today, as long as you're willing to admit your mistake and apologize. Mrs. Ethan's position will still be yours. When Lily's child is born, you can be allowed to raise it. Lily lowers her head, smiling and rubbing her stomach. But after hearing Ethan's words, her movements suddenly stopped for a moment. I looked up at Ethan. Child. I once thought of having a child with Ethan. I was so stupid back then. Nowadays, I just look up coldly at Ethan. I just looked up at him coldly. I don't have a trace of warmth in my voice. I can't do it. Hearing this answer, Ethan froze. He looked at my back. His heart became uneasy again. He couldn't help but catch up, grabbed my arm and asked, Sophia, what are you trying to do? I turned to look at him. His eyes were cold, distant. There's nothing to say. I've decided to divorce you. Ethan, what you do from now on. It has nothing to do with me anymore. Maybe because I made things clear. He didn't come to see me again in the past 2 days, but the nurse suddenly informed me that a patient needed surgery. I rushed into the operating room. The surgery went well. Just when sewing up the wound, I heard a loud noise from outside. I pushed open the door, found a circle of reporters standing outside. They were holding microphones and cameras. The lenses were all pointed at me. Someone asked, Sophia, I heard you're divorcing Ethan. How many days do you plan to go back this time? I heard Ethan's secretary is pregnant. Sophia, will you be helping her with the baby? Sophia, Ethan has announced the divorce online. What do you think? I'll keep my anger down. This is a hospital. We'll talk about it when I'm out of the hospital. But I was just about to leave with the reporter. Suddenly, someone rushed out from the crowd, blocked in front of me. You incompetent doctor, give back my mom's life. If you hadn't insisted on operating on my mom, how did she become like this? My arm was scratched painfully, but I still stared at the person in the hospital bed. How is this possible? Obviously, everything was going well. I stabilized my shaking body, voice a little hoarse. Wait a minute, let me see. Immediately after, the spotlight hits my face. The sound of the camera's shutter prevents me from moving on. Sophia, what do you think of the failed operation, Sophia? Did you do this on purpose all of a sudden? Suddenly, I'm on the hot seat of the news about the people I've killed. My private messages were full of criticism. That's when Ethan showed up. Ethan appeared. He had a confident look on his face. He said to Sophia, Sophia, if you admit your mistake now, I can still consider helping you to clarify. You have to understand. The most important thing for a doctor is medical ethics. If you are exposed now, your dream of becoming a doctor will be completely over. I raised my head. Tears were welling up in my eyes. Ethan, you set me up as soon as I saw him. I knew it, Sophia. What do you think? I gave him a cold look. I think Ethan has changed completely. The one who always tried to protect me by all means before. Now he's threatening me with my dreams. Ethan, you're such a disappointment to me. I wipe away the tears from the corner of my eyes, turn around and go back to pack my bags, send him the divorce papers. Then I boarded the plane without hesitation. Ethan, we will never see each other again in this life. The plane had just landed. I got a call from my teacher. He smiled and said, Sophia, I've asked your senior to pick you up. Brother, I didn't have time to say anything. The other end of the phone had already hung up. I was left alone. I do have a brother. When I was young, I secretly liked him. On graduation day, I confessed my love to him with the strength of alcohol, but we never contacted each other after graduation. So many years have passed. He's probably forgotten about it. I'm still a little nervous. My heart was pounding until I saw Lucas standing at the door waiting for me. I carry luggage. a little embarrassed to go forward. First speak, brother. Long time no see. I heard that your research in the past 2 years has been published in a magazine. That's awesome. Congratulations. Lucas smiled gently, turns his head. He was wearing a gray trench coat. A hint of sharpness came through his face. He smoothly took my luggage. Smiling, he said, "Looks like senior sister has been paying quite a bit of attention to me all these years." I avoided his gaze. Responded in a loud voice, "That's for sure, that's for sure. It's been so many years. How come you haven't sent a message to Shifu?" I touched my head and said, "I've been busy, brother. Let's hurry up and go. The teacher will be anxious later," said. I got into the car, fastened the seat belt. Lucas stood at the door of the car and looked at me, smiled helplessly, finally got into the car, arrived at the place. The teacher was already waiting at the door. He smiled and touched my head, said, "Look, you've lost weight over the years." Hearing these words, I felt a pang in my heart. In the 7 years with Ethan, he never cared about my health. The teacher sighed, gently patted my shoulder. Lucas blushed though, but still handed me a piece of paper. The teacher comforted, "It's okay, don't be afraid. There will be teachers in the future. 7 years of living together. It's not as good as a word of concern from a foreign country. Until now, I've never really known what it means to be a relative." At night, I leaned against the window, looking at the dark far away, but my heart was unusually calm. Lucas came over at some point, holding a box of bean noodle cakes in his hand. My stomach grumbled just in time. I looked at the box in his hand with a surprised face. "How did you know I wanted to eat this?" "Since marrying Ethan. I haven't eaten bean noodle cakes since I married Ethan, back when I was in school. This was my favorite. I still remember I used to say to Shifu back then, 'You're actually quite nice.' I said, 'Brother, you're so handsome. There must be a lot of people who like you.' I was just trying to have a casual conversation, to lighten the mood. But I waited for a while. He didn't make a sound. I turned my head right into Lucas' deep eyes. He kept staring at me, then lowered his head and said, "Maybe, somehow." I suddenly felt a little weak thinking about it. I even became extra careful eating the bean noodle cake. "Brother, this is for you." Lucas glanced at me, shaking his head. He couldn't help but tap my brow with his index finger, says, "Sophia, isn't there anything you want to say to me?" My hand with the bean noodle cake stops for a moment. I don't know if I'm looking at it wrong. I think I saw tears in Lucas' eyes. Even his voice was a bit choked. "Sophia, you're so heartless." I was at a loss. I could only watch him walk away. In the past few days, my teacher took me to study foreign techniques. My schedule is full, although busy, but I feel more fulfilled than ever. However, I always feel that there is a gaze with resentment has been following me. Until today, when I came home from work, because it was the night shift, there weren't many people on the road, just outside the hospital. I felt the situation was not right. Intuition told me someone was following me. I hurriedly ran a few steps, hiding right into the toilet in front of me. Sure enough, I saw a dark shadow, although I've seen many similar reports over the years. But it was the first time I encountered it in reality. My hands were almost shaking. Even the cell phone was unsteady. I subconsciously dialed Lucas' number. The call was quickly answered. I stammered, didn't dare to be too loud either, simply explained the situation. Lucas was silent for a moment. Then his tone became unusually gentle. "Don't be afraid, wait for me," 4 short words. But let me immediately have the courage. The heart is also much more solid. It didn't take long. I heard a familiar voice outside the toilet. "Sophia, is that you?" At that moment, I almost cried. Probably because I was accompanied by someone. The dark shadow behind me was gone. I finally relaxed. Only then did I realize, I don't know when, I had already held Lucas' hand. I was in a hurry to pull my hand out, but Lucas grabbed it tighter in my memory. He has always been a person who knows how to control the situation. Rarely would he be as out of control and forceful as he was now. He pulled me into his arms as soon as he could. The evening breeze brushed his face. I smelled a hint of alcohol. He held me carefully in his arms, as if I were a treasure. He whispered, "Sophia, I've been waiting for you for a long time. I've been waiting for you for a long time," he said. His tone suddenly became happy. "It's okay. I've been insisting. You finally came back to me. Sophia, you're such a liar. Didn't you say you like me? Why didn't you come to me for so long?" When he was drunk, he spoke in a childish manner. I didn't realize until now. He did hear my confession and has been waiting for me. Lucas's eyes sparkled. It was as if I could see my own reflection in his eyes. I waited for Ethan for 7 years, but he finally chose someone else before me. It made me feel for a while that I might not deserve to be loved. I often woke up in nightmares. To make it less difficult for me, I spent all my time at work. But this moment, I watched Lucas expressing his love in front of me nonstop. My heart felt warm. One moment after another. It turns out there are people in this world who care about me. He is on the other side of the ocean, waiting for me to find him. I've accumulated quite a bit of surgical experience in China, plus this period of study. Even people who aren't in this business complimented me on how well I did. My teacher even made a point of sending articles to support me, speaking up for that medical controversy I encountered at home. Several famous foreign doctors also recognized my professional ability. Although I still don't have a good reputation at home, but abroad, my number has become a hit. Many patients were moved to express their gratitude to me. That day, I received an appointment request from a domestic account. I also wanted to reconnect with a domestic patient, so I paid special attention to this patient. Dedicated time was set aside, but I didn't expect the person who booked my appointment to be Ethan. Seeing him walk in, I was a little surprised to see him walk in. He had dark circles under his eyes. And an unshaven beard. His clothes were wrinkled. He was followed by a large group of reporters, obviously prepared for this. As soon as the reporters saw Ethan appear, they immediately got excited. They looked back and forth between the two of us. Someone boldly raised the microphone and asked Ethan, "Ethan, did you come here on purpose this time? Or is it because Sophia is asking for you?" Ethan ignored the reporter. He kept his eyes on me. He said, Sophia, you said yes to my appointment. You said yes to my appointment because you knew it was me. You still have me in your heart, right?" He kept asking me questions. I just smiled coldly. "Ethan, if I had known it was you, I wouldn't have said yes." Lucas rushed over when he heard the noise. As soon as he saw Ethan, his face didn't look too good. He pulled me to leave. I shook my head. I patted his hand gently, signaling him not to worry. There are some things. I also happen to want to take this opportunity to make it clear. Everyone is here today. 3 years ago, there was a medical incident. You haven't forgotten about it, right? I said. I took out the documents from my bag. This is the medical report of the previous patient. She was born with a heart condition, but no one told me before the operation. Later, I found that person and found out that he was paid to find trouble on purpose. I don't need to say anything. It's not good for anyone if it gets out of hand. I raised my head, with sharp eyes staring at Ethan, asked, "Ethan, you have been following me like this. I'll give these documents to my lawyer. I will give these documents to a lawyer. You'll be waiting for a letter from the lawyer." Reporters immediately turned their attention to Ethan. These years. He is the youngest business president. He's attracted a lot of fans. His gossip news can be more valuable than mine, while the reporters surrounded him. I took Lucas' hand, took the opportunity to escape from the crowd. I ran all the way to the roof, finally relieved. Standing on the rooftop, I looked at the vast sky, shouted loudly towards the distance. I made it. Lucas stood next to me, smiling at me. I said, "Sophia, be sure to solve all the puzzles. Put every patient out of their misery." I shouted. My shoulders felt lighter. My heart is also light. I patted Lucas, smiled, and said to him, "Don't just look at me. You also try to shout twice. I feel very comfortable. Look at you all day long. You must be very depressed. Try it, good brother. I won't lie to you." Lucas was a bit hesitant, but under my pressure, he still followed my example, shouting into the distance, "I hope the one I'm waiting for will cherish my waiting." After saying that, he suddenly turned his head to look at me. I was startled by this sudden move. The body swayed. A sharp pain came from my ankle. I couldn't help but scream. Lucas squatted down, carefully took off my shoes, gently massaging my red and swollen ankle. The pain slowly eased. I smiled and joked, "Senior, when did you learn this trick?" He lowered his head, continued to press my feet. "I learned it a long time ago. You've forgotten. You used to love wearing high heels, but you always broke your ankle. I learned Chinese massage. It's a pity you don't wear high heels these days." I was silent. There was suddenly an indescribable feeling in my heart. I hadn't yet figured out what this strange feeling was about. Lucas was already carrying me on his back, so close. I could smell the faint soapy scent of his body. My face instantly turned red, quickly squirming to get off his back. Lucas said softly, "Listen, don't move." In the quiet stairwell, only the sound of our breaths intertwined. To break the awkwardness, I took the initiative to speak. Senior, I have to trouble you again this time. Luca's back suddenly stiffened. Then his voice came with a hint of helplessness. Sophia, you understand what I want to hear. I don't remember how I got back to the apartment, probably ran back in a panic. My face was hot. I got under the covers. All I could think about was Lucas. If it wasn't for the phone suddenly ringing, I probably would have suffocated under the covers. The phone was silent for a long time. I thought it was a wrong number, was about to hang up. Suddenly, a hoarse voice came, Sophia. Honey, where are you? I froze for a moment from the drunken voice. I heard it was Ethan, he said. He said, honey, why don't you come pick me up? Why don't you come pick me up? I missed you. I wanted to hang up, but I was afraid that he would bother me again. I really don't want to get a new phone card. Ethan, we're divorced, and you have a child. What makes you think I'll wait for you? He suddenly got emotional. He said loudly, it doesn't count if I don't agree. I still calmly replied, it's your own choice to cheat. What happens to you in the future has nothing to do with me. He suddenly stopped talking. Quiet down. I had thought that after making things clear this time, he wouldn't contact me again. 2 days later, there was another message from that number. Sophia, I have something urgent for you this time. I decided to cut ties with him completely, but I made preparations beforehand. I sent a message to Lucas. Suddenly, a small red car rushed towards me. The driver didn't have time to dodge. We crashed together, vaguely. I only felt a cold chill on my head. I wasn't sure if I was mistaken. It seemed like I saw Ethan when I opened my eyes again. I found myself lying on a hospital bed, surrounded by the smell of disinfectant, white sheets, and Ethan. He was sitting beside my bed with a worried look on his face, seeing me awake. When he saw me wake up, he immediately held my hand and said, Sophia, you're finally awake. Sophia, you finally woke up. You don't know how anxious I was. I drew back my hand and rubbed my head. I rubbed my head. You're the one who brought me to the hospital. There was a flash of panic in his eyes, but it was quickly covered up by him. I happened to be passing by and saw you. I stared into his eyes, completely disbelieving that it was a coincidence. Weren't you the one who told me to go? He froze for a moment, rushed to take out his cell phone. He stood up violently. It must have been Lily. She used my phone to send it. He turned his head and looked at me. With a pleading tone, he said, Sophia, forgive me. I was deceived by her. You're the only one in my heart. You are the one I love the most. He grasped my hand tightly. He continued, you see, this time you are hurt. It's the opportunity God gave me. Don't worry. I will take good care of you. I let go of my hand, slowly sizing him up. Cold smile. Ethan, we've been together for so long. Have you really only been fooled by her this once? What about all the times before that? You know you've done it before, don't you? And, is this really from Lily? He looks a little nervous, asked, what do you mean by that, Sophia? Sophia, don't you believe me? Lily sent the message on your cell phone. You really didn't know. You could have stopped her, but you let her make a mistake on purpose. Then you show up as a hero. This routine is too old-fashioned. It makes people uncomfortable. Ethan grabbed my hand violently. He said emotionally, Sophia, I really love you. I won't let you go. Luckily, Lucas arrived in time. He was in front of me. He said to Ethan, there's nothing more to talk about between us. You not only slandered me, you even tried to harm someone this time. I'll have a lawyer contact you in the next couple of days. Ethan was pushed to the ground like a deflated ball. Laughing, pale and weak, he mumbled, Sophia, you're so cruel. The next few days, Ethan came too, but he never came into the ward. He always peeked at me through the glass in the door. Lucas peeled an apple and handed it to me. He asked softly, should I let him go? I shake my head. Thinks it doesn't matter. Ethan is nothing more than a stranger to me now. He's just a stranger. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Lily found out the news from somewhere. She came to see me. She was gloomy. She hadn't seen me in months. She looked very haggard. Sophia, what the hell did you do? I frowned. Didn't quite understand what she meant. She suddenly rushed over to me. She grabbed me by the neck. Luckily, it was in the hospital. The people around me quickly pulled Lily away. I held onto the wall. I was gasping for air. It took a while for my oxygen-deprived brain to slow down. Lily was held down by me, still glaring hard at me. When she saw Ethan coming, she immediately shut her mouth. She cried and jumped to Ethan's feet, but Ethan didn't even look at her. His eyes fell directly on me. Lily was still crying. Ethan, you said before that you would always love me. You said you would marry me. Ethan lowers his head. He looked down at her. Love you. Do you deserve it? Lily freezes, tears welling up in her eyes, but they couldn't fall. She sat down on the floor in surprise. I didn't want to hear them argue anymore. Luckily, Lucas' car arrived at that moment. He examined me carefully. That was a relief. I heard that after we left. Lily suddenly lost her mind, but it has nothing to do with us. It was all her own doing. I stayed in the hospital for a month. I especially missed the smell of everything except disinfectant. Lucas took me to a restaurant by the sea. I walked barefoot on the sand, closing my eyes, feeling the freshness around me. I've always had a special longing for the ocean. I once told Ethan about it, wanted him to accompany me, but he never took my wish seriously. I waited from hopeful to disheartened. Then I learned to comfort myself. I told myself 1,000,000 times, it's okay, there's always next time. The moment I saw the ocean with my own eyes, I couldn't hold back my tears. It's as if they had spoken the grievances in my heart before I did. Lucas was standing not far away, looking at me with a smile on his lips, and then I heard his voice, Sophia, look up at the sky. I looked up. I saw fireworks blooming in the sky in the distance, and spelled out the words, Sophia will definitely be the best doctor. When I used to watch TV dramas, I always thought the male lead giving away fireworks seemed cliché. But when I actually saw the gorgeous fireworks lighting up my face, I turned back to Lucas, realized that he only had me in his eyes. Ever since Lucas confessed his love to me that day, I've been avoiding him. But then I was hospitalized for a car accident. He became the only one who stayed by my side. Both of us tacitly didn't mention what happened that day. The sound of fireworks exploding in the distance still echoed in my ears. I suddenly felt I should give myself a chance to recognize that I am worthy of being loved, a chance to believe that I can still love. I lifted my head. My eyes fall on Lucas, and then I take one firm step towards him. Having feelings doesn't mean losing yourself. Failing doesn't necessarily mean you can't succeed. The present me. Both have the courage to reject. I also have the courage to accept. Lucas, let's try. The teacher was so happy when she found out we were together. I didn't know until now. Lucas is my teacher's son. The teacher held my hand. Her eyes are gentle. She glanced at Lucas. This kid, when you weren't in Paris, he always stayed alone in the yard to make bean flour cakes. I ate them every day. I gained a lot of weight. I was thinking, if he's still so stubborn this time, I'll recognize you as my goddaughter, probably because that goddaughter touched him, the 5th month we were together. Lucas proposed to me. I thought it was a bit sudden. Lucas leaned his head on my shoulder. He hugged me from behind. He said, it's not sudden, Sophia. I've been waiting for your day for a long time. In the end, we decided to have an engagement party first. Lucas took my hand. He put it on his chest. He said to me seriously, I know you may not trust me yet, but that's okay. I'll wait for you. Wait for the day you really want to be okay. At the engagement ceremony, Lucas transferred most of his assets to me, and they were permanently titled to my personal assets. He told me, this is to provide a guarantee for me in the future, and also gives me the right to leave at any time. At the engagement party, I also received a package in the mail anonymously. It contained a black card and a bunch of letters, but I didn't take it. Trusted someone to return the stuff. Looking back, Lucas was waiting behind me with a smile. I ran towards him with my skirt in hand. I knew my future would be full of light.